Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in to today's Wellness Wednesday webinar. I'm Katrina, I'm working within the ESS Nutrition and Wellbeing team, and I'll be hosting today's webinar on a sustainable Christmas. So some of you may have tuned into our webinar back in August, which was all around sustainable summers, and we got some really good feedback saying that it made people think about things that they perhaps hadn't thought about before on how to be sustainable, which is why we're doing another edition of sustainability within our wellness webinars. So today I will be reminding you why sustainability is so important, and then I'll be providing you with my top tips on a variety of sustainable solutions to use over the festive seasons. This is from our Christmas dinners to the gifts that we give and receive, and also some of the decorations around our house. So why should we be sustainable and why is it so important? So sustainability is when we meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And people are being more and more informed about the need to be sustainable. I won't go into too much detail, but obviously recently we had COP26 in Glasgow, and the outcomes of this focus on how we can be more sustainable. So more people are becoming aware of it and the need to do so. And the reason why it's so important is for environmental protection, so to try and prevent millions of animals becoming extinct, ensure there's diversity within our ecosystems, and also trying to reduce and prevent any further damage that we are doing to our atmosphere, such as global warming. Also important for social development, so maintaining a good quality of life for us and obviously also the future generations, our children, grandchildren, and so on. And also for economic development, so supporting long-term economic growth, supporting the local community, which is obviously going to impact social and environmental protection as well. So it's so important because an unsustainable environment can cause economic and environmental crashes if we don't step in and put things in place to reduce or lower this. So let's start off with arguably the best part about Christmas, and that is our Christmas dinner. And hopefully we all have a little bit of passion around food, obviously within the industry that we work for as well. So here are my top tips to ensure that you have a sustainable Christmas dinner. So first of all, try and use local suppliers, which have come from the UK. This will mean that the food that we buy have had to travel a lot less, so it will have a lower carbon footprint. It also helps to support our local farmers and economy. So where you can, find where your closest food market is and make a trip down there and pick up all of the fruits and vegetables that you'll be using over the Christmas period. Try and use seasonal ingredients. Luckily for us, most of our beloved veg heroes at Christmas time, including potatoes, Brussels sprouts, carrots, leeks and parsnips, are all in season throughout winter. So hopefully we can already tick that one off our list of how we're going to be sustainable this Christmas. Buy foods that meet a credible certified standard. So this just means that they have been produced with sustainability, the farmers in mind, so that it's sustainable for the environment, but also for the livelihoods of those farmers. Reduce your meat portion size. So although it is difficult to call foods unsustainable, animal products are associated with a larger environmental impact. Obviously, it will vary massively between which animal product you choose. For example, cattle and sheep produce more methane than perhaps chicken and pork, but just try and reduce the amount that you're having. A lot of people tend to think we get the majority of our protein from meat, but actually we get protein from every single food that we consume. Yes, some may contain very small amounts, but actually if we just reduce our portion size of meat slightly, we can be sure we're getting enough protein anyway. And also try and aim for at least one meat-free meal over the Christmas period. So again, that just goes hand in hand with reducing the amount of meat that we're consuming and opting for more plant-based options. Next up, let's look at Christmas leftovers. So every year, over 270,000 tonnes of food is wasted in the UK over the Christmas period. Now, this includes 2 million turkeys, which actually everyone seems to struggle to find on the shelves over Christmas. So perhaps just check your freezer that you haven't already got one in there, because there are enough turkeys out there. Also, 5 million Christmas puddings and 74 million mince pies get binned each year while they are still edible. So what is it that we can do to try and reduce food waste? Now, the reason why food waste is bad for the environment is because the producing, the moving, the storing and the cooking of the food uses the energy, fuel and the water, which obviously each of these processes will also let off greenhouse gases, contributing to climate change. So what can we do? So first of all, think about how many you are cooking for. It goes without saying, obviously, the more you're cooking for, the more you will need. That is very obvious. But instead, as well, on top of that, try and consider, who is it you're cooking for? Is it just you and your partner? Is it perhaps your growing lad who tends to eat truckloads of food? They're going through a growth spurt, they just tend to eat a lot. Or is it your grandparents, your parents who tend to have a smaller appetite? So just try and think about how much they would be consuming and whether you need to add the extra spud to your roast potatoes or not. Next, think about our portion size. So inevitably, it is Christmas time. Everybody is likely to fill up their plate as much as possible, but make sure that you don't have food in excess of the number of plates that you are portioning up. And also think about how much of each food group you have. So it is recommended that half of your plate should be from vegetables, a quarter from protein and a quarter from starchy carbohydrates. So again, think about that with the amounts that you're cooking. So you should have double the amount of vegetables, the amount of turkey or meat or nut roast, and double the amount of vegetables to roast potatoes and so on as well. Also, look at the dates of products and use accordingly. So try and pick those in the supermarket which do have the longer shelf lives. Obviously, everyone's probably going to be looking for the same, but do just have a little look, go for the ones at the back, see if there is one with longer shelf life. Also, when obviously you're back at home, try and use those which do have the shorter shelf life. And try not to open another item when you already have one open. So for example, a box of biscuits, if all of your favourite ones have gone and you know you've got another box, try not to be tempted to open up that new box, finish the first lot, because otherwise they're likely to go stale when you've then got two boxes open. And finally, a very traditional one, love your leftovers. So it can sometimes be a bit boring if you are having the same meal, so try and get creative with it. It doesn't have to be a repeated roast dinner the next day. You can use them for many different things, whether it be your buffet day, your Boxing Day buffet, make some soups, curries, hot pots, pies. There's lots of zero waste recipes that you can find online following Christmas, as well as on our Instagram page. So we've got lots of zero waste recipes or a variety of different ones on there. If you just give it a scroll for some ideas, and that's We Are ESS on Instagram. Next, let's move away from food and onto our gifts. So it's suggested that UK households will throw away more than 277,000 miles of Christmas wrapping paper each year. Now that's enough to stretch to the moon. So if we were to suggest to you not wrapping your gifts, I think you could agree that an element of excitement would be removed around Christmas. Personally, I loved having a wrap present, giving it a little shake, trying to guess what's in there, or struggling to get into my grandparents' gifts because obviously all the sellotape all the edges are covered in sellotape, it would remove that element of excitement. So I'm not going to suggest that, but instead you may want to try avoiding the following. So plastic containing wrapping paper, so if they don't rip easily, they're likely to contain a film of plastic. Try avoid ribbons and glitter wrapping paper because these are less recyclable. And instead say yes to brown parcel paper. It might seem boring, but can you decorate it? I know that some shops, I saw actually an advert for Fat Face, they've made their shopping bags into wrapping paper. So they're brown paper, you cut them, and you can wrap gifts within the bag itself, which I think is a really clever idea. More places hopefully will start to do it. Reuse old gift bags that you perhaps have been given in the years previous, and look for FSC or PEFC logos on wrapping paper too. Now, although wrapped gifts can look very pleasing to the eye sat under the Christmas tree, sometimes once they're opened, they're perhaps not exactly what we wanted, or perhaps they're duplicates, we've got too many of them. And on average, there are about 70 million unwanted Christmas presents every year. So why don't we try and rethink our gifts and give them something to remember and that they've actually really made an effort with? So some ideas may include upcycling or homemade gifts. So this really shows that you care about them. A gift made with love and effort is often worth a lot more than something you've just grabbed off the shelf and just got a pile of presents in front of you and thought, oh, I'll give that to X, Y, and Z, and so on. So often that is a lot more thoughtful, and people do appreciate that if it's upcycled or homemade. Gift and experience. So this is my personal favourite. I'm a true believer in making memories and doing things rather than having something material. So think about, can you go for an afternoon tea, a trip to your local garden centre to see some of the decorations, do an activity or have a day out instead of giving them something which perhaps they'll use for a year and then obviously get rid of shortly after. Adopt an animal. So this is great for those who have a huge heart. This is also as well a gift that just keeps on giving. You're likely to receive pictures and notes from them throughout the year. So this is a really nice option instead of a material gift. And also you can gift a charity donation. So if there is someone you know who has a charity very close to them that means a lot to them, why not give it to money to the people who need it, or research that could actually be life-saving and means a lot to people instead? Now, if you are at the receiving end of an unwanted gift and you don't want to hurt the giver's feelings by asking for a return receipt, you might want to consider donating it. So how can you do this? So you could re-gift it. So you can give it to somebody else for their birthday or a Christmas gift for next year. Obviously, remember who gifted it to you so you don't then give it back to them. Donate to charity shops, children's hospitals and homeless shelters. So do you have duplicates of the same toy that you could give to a children's hospital, or have you been bought a bobble hat that just doesn't suit you and you could give to a homeless shelter, and so on? You can donate old stamps. So all of those Christmas cards which come through the post, if you actually keep the stamp, they can be donated to certain charities where these will be turned into much needed donations. Before creating this webinar, I was not aware of this, so it's definitely something that I will be doing this year or encouraging other people to do. If you just get the envelope, cut the envelope, leaving about 1 centimetre around the stamp and post it off to some charities. It's not all of them, but many of them do now, then this can be changed into a donation for them. And any unwanted books or books that you perhaps have read after the Christmas period, you can take these to a library or a school and I'm sure they'll absolutely love them. So next, let's look at sustainable decoration. So a good way is to try and upcycle old things into new things, such as with our Christmas decorations. So this is a great way to reduce waste and also get our kids involved. Or if you just need some time to yourself to take your mind off other stresses for Christmas, then you can get creative as well. And getting creative boosts our mood as well. So this is a great idea. Now, I obviously, again, just searched the internet for some good ideas, and these are what I came across. So we've got little tin can lanterns, so you can wrap them in sustainable wrapping paper, decorate them, tie some string around them and stick a candle in them to make some nice little lanterns. These plastic bottle Christmas trees, although we want to be saying no to single-use plastics, obviously there might be occasions when we do pick up a plastic water bottle, but can we get creative, create these pretty Christmas trees with them? This is one of my favourites. I have these in my room all times of the year. Empty bottles, wine bottles, spirit bottles, whatever it may be, just glass bottles, sticking a candle in the top and lighting them. Obviously, if it's a pretty bottle in itself, you probably don't need to decorate it, but if not, you can wrap it in some paper, put some ribbons around it and so on. And then I also like to change the colour of the candles so that obviously different colours melt down the glass bottle and it looks really pretty by the end of it. You can use your old toilet roll holders, cut them up, stick them to make snowflakes. I used to personally make snowflakes cutting the paper out and making strings of them, but obviously this is also a really creative way to make some pretty decorations. You can Malika paint as well. These biscuit name cards, if you want a zero waste Christmas, you can make some biscuits and put the names on them so that we're not putting paper or cardboard on the table, which we're then going to throw out. And also, if you're having to wait a long period between starter and main, the turkey hasn't cooked, people can have a nibble on these biscuits as well to keep them full between. And finally, why not try and make a wreath? So go foraging for some leaves from the trees and pine cones, add some fragrant items such as cinnamon and oranges. It makes a really nice decoration for the home as well. Now, arguably onto the best decoration at Christmas time, obviously the tree. You can't necessarily have this at any other point within the year. So let's settle the debate, which is best, real or artificial? And this is a tough one to decide on. So on a large scale, deforestation can cause climate change, flooding and increased greenhouse gases within the atmosphere. So you might be arguing, well, really, real trees are not that ideal. However, they have found that real trees have a smaller carbon footprint and can therefore be better for the environment than fake ones. This is if they are bought locally. Also, it suggested that many real Christmas trees are farmed responsibly. So actually, they're farmed for the reason of Christmas, that they're chopped down, but as soon as they're chopped down, another one will be planted for that one which has been cut down. And another benefit of the real Christmas tree is that obviously it works in the same as any other Christmas tree. It absorbs carbon dioxide and gives out oxygen. So it sort of filters our air, helping purify the air within our home. However, if you do have a real tree, if it is not disposed of responsibly, it will just end up in landfill and let off lots of methane and carbon dioxide, and will actually undo all of the hard work and all the sustainable traits of having a real Christmas tree. So just make sure you dispose of it properly. So real Christmas trees do have lots of benefits, but obviously can be undone if you don't dispose of it correctly. Now onto an artificial tree. If you do choose to have an artificial tree, the good news is obviously this can be used for as long as possible. And if you are using an artificial tree, the longer you have it, obviously the more sustainable it is going to be. These trees are also good for pets. as obviously the pine needles are often hazardous to our dogs or cats or any other pets if they are swallowed. And the downfall of artificial Christmas trees is obviously it's made up of plastic, which actually cannot be recyclable. So they will just end up in landfills and take up our space. So that's a little bit of a comparison between a real and an artificial tree. And I think it's really down to your own preference and what you are used to having. But obviously there are pros and cons of each. So that brings me to the end of the webinar. Just a quick summary. So try and get your sustainable thinking hat on. There's lots of things that we can do to be sustainable, especially over the festive period. Be portion wise. So try and reduce the amount of leftover food that we have by thinking about the portion plate as well as who you're cooking for. Get creative with your leftovers if there are any leftovers. As I said, you can check out our Instagram. We are ESS for some zero waste recipes. Give a gift that keeps on giving. So be considerate about what you're giving people. Can it be something which isn't materialistic or that is being homemade, so that we're not throwing more away into landfills at the end of the day? And be creative and make your own decorations. Christmas time is a great time to get creative, make things and make our homes look pretty as well, but try and be sustainable when doing so. So thank you very much for listening. If you do have any questions, or if you do make any of your decorations on this webinar, if you have a little Google and find some others that you'd like to try, please do send them in to us and get in touch on our email address, ess.wellness@compass-group.co.uk. Thank you everybody and enjoy the rest of your day.